This section is going to cover different techniques to join materials together and the tools we use to achieve this. For an overview of what the videos are going to cover, first we'll have a video covering all the basics of nuts and bolts. Then we'll cover taps and dies, which are used to create threads. Then we'll cover pop rivets, which is a way of quickly making quite permanent connections between materials. Then we'll look at two different types of gluing, both hot glue and super glue, and finally finish it off with safety wire, which is a specialty way of preventing vibration loosening. The first video up will be covering the basics of nuts and bolts and was created for this module. In the video, we'll be looking at the use of nuts and bolts, what different types of nuts and bolts are used for, the function of washers when installing nuts and bolts, and then finally an overview of different techniques that are used to prevent loosening. Next up will be a video on taps and dies created by New Metal Worker. He'll be explaining the purposes of tapping, how to correctly use taps and dies. He'll do a really powerful demonstration of their use, and finally it will wrap up with a supplementary video placed at the end, which is going to cover exactly how to use the tap handles that are in our workshop. The next video will be on pop rivets, created by Low Range Off-Road. In the video will be a great cover on how to use rivet guns, how to determine the size of a hole, which in turn dictates the type of rivet that you want to use when riveting. There'll be a great demonstration of the use of a rivet gun to install rivets. And at the end of the video will be placed a supplementary video covering different materials that you might want to use a pop rivet with. Following this will be a video on how to use a hot glue gun, which has been created by gluegunsdirect.com. They'll be showing us how to set up a hot glue gun, how to correctly use a hot glue gun, and finally the best practices for packing up and cleaning a hot glue gun after its use. Moving on to super glue, we have this video created by Gorilla Glue. They're going to teach us how to prepare materials for gluing, give a rundown of the different application and curing times when you're using super glue, and finally tips on how to remove glue in case you get it on yourself or on parts that you didn't want to get it on. There'll be another video also created by Gorilla Glue on epoxy glue. Somewhat similar to the super glue video, we'll learn how to prepare materials for gluing. We'll learn how to mix and apply epoxy glue, which is different than super glue. Then we'll be learning about the correct clamping technique and setting times that you want to use when using epoxy glue. Last video in this section will be on safety wire and created by Brad McDonald. Brad is going to demonstrate how to correctly install safety wire. This is going to include a great demonstration of applying the safety wire, and Brad also has some great tips in there.